Hola, Facebook. It's Bethel here, Daily Divinity Coach, here for episode number 23 of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. I'm going to go ahead and tag a few friends. And so if you're watching the recorded video, go ahead and fast forward while I do this, maybe just like 2 minutes, while I tag a few friends and let them know that we're here and we're getting ready to start the episode. Really excited about today's episode. So just tagging a few friends here, letting them know that we're getting ready to start this new episode. So excited about it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I think we've tagged enough folk. So again, it's Bethel here, your Daily Divinity Coach, here for episode number 23 of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. Episode number 23's got a fun, exciting, engaging title, and I'm over the moon about this episode, and I'm sure you will be too as we engage in the episode. So the title is Toni Morrison, Mr. Thoughts Are Things, and the Elixir of Immortality. Today's episode is it's Sunday, November 22nd, 2020, and I'm here on Facebook Live like I am every Sunday, starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I want to make sure I get my shout out actually got two shout outs. Number one to Emmylou, the Emmylou, she likes her shout outs. And number two to Healy, Miss H, the lovely Healy, for giving me a gift from the heart. She put up a website for me. So I have a live website. It went live last night. It's dailydivinitycoach.com. Please check it out. It's a website that grew organically. Healy, who's been faithful watching my episodes, reading my posts for many months now, said, you know what, Bethel, I've been watching your episodes, and I noticed you take a lot of time at the beginning to introduce yourself and all that kind of stuff. If you had a website where people could go to, you could delve into your content sooner and possibly end your episodes on time. So again, shout out, thank you to Miss Healy, Miss H, for providing me a free gift of a website. And so you can go to www.dailydivinitycoach.com and check out that website. So we got a few people joining. Frank, Sophia, if you don't mind, give me a thumbs up. I just want to do a check on the sound, make sure that you can hear me, and then we'll get going with the content. While we're waiting on the thumbs up from Sophia, Frank, or whoever else is currently watching, I did want to just give a brief introduction to myself and say that on the website you can find out about me, my background with the law of attraction, right, the Elixir of Immortality, my studies, that type of thing. You can also download, obviously you can, if you have my phone number, you can text, okay, I got the thumbs up, so the sound's working. You can text me if you have my phone number, or you can IM me. But if you like, you can also, from the website, download a form. If you haven't received your free bracelets yet, I give away free bracelets. You can take a look at them, you can download a form and submit that. It's free shipping within the US and until the end of the year with anywhere in North America or Europe. I'll be sending these bracelets out for free as well, so free shipping. You can also, if you have a podcast or your own live show, there's a form there you can fill out, submit. If you'd like me to be a guest on your show, if you want scientific prayer, free up to 45 minutes of one-on-one divinity coaching, those forms are there. My podcast that I did recently with Alex is embedded in that website, so you can just go in there and listen to that podcast. My posts from Instagram are embedded in there, so it's a great gift. And again, thank you. My heart's full of gratitude for Miss H, for Miss Healy for providing that website for me. So Daily Divinity Coach. So without further ado, we're going to dig in to the episode. I'm really excited about this. So what I wanted to do first is talk about, we're going to actually go backwards in the title. So the title is Toni Morrison, Mr. Thoughts Are Things, and the Elixir of Immortality. We're going to start with the Elixir of Immortality and then work backwards to Toni Morrison. So the Elixir of Immortality, also known as the Elixir of Life, what is it? It's a myth, is what it is. It's a myth. It's a myth that there's a potion that can grant you eternal life and our eternal youth. Not unlike the fountain of youth, right? And the elixir of life, or the elixir of immortality, is also said to cure all diseases. That's also a part of the elixir of life, or elixir of immortality. So we know in our study of history that people have attempted this, right? They've attempted to mix a cocktail of elixir of life or elixir of immortality and have people drink it and see if it worked. One of the most popular accounts is the Jiajing emperor in the Ming Dynasty. He actually died from mercury poisoning from an elixir of life cocktail, an elixir of immortality cocktail that was mixed by Chinese alchemists, right? What are alchemists? Alchemists are people most famously known for attempting to change base metals, right? So inexpensive, cheap metals into precious metals like gold. They thought they could do that. Obviously, there's no scientific evidence behind that. No research, no ancient text, ancient wisdom that supports that. So that's why we call it a myth. So that's important to know what the elixir of life, immortality is for this episode, and for most all of my episodes, to tell you the truth, because I'm best known for talking about immortality. So who is Mr. Thoughts or Things? If you didn't read my post on yesterday, you're probably still wondering, who is Mr. Thoughts or Things? It's this guy, Prentice Mulford. Prentice Mulford lived from 1834 to 1891. So 1834, 1891, Prentice Mulford, he was a literary humorist and author. He wrote books. He worked for the San Francisco weekly newspaper, The Golden Era, which is interesting to me because I'm from San Francisco. So Mulford, actually originally from New York, lived in San Francisco, during the gold rush, went out there, wrote for San Francisco weekly newspaper. So we have that connection. And also, when he was writing his books, he was actually based here in Boston when he was doing that. So we have that connection as well. Anyway, he also wrote for the New York evening newspaper, the Daily Graphic. He was an author. He was a literary humorist. This is who he was. And he wrote actually more than two books, but he wrote two important books. Your Forces and How to Use Them, right? That was written in 1888, and it's a long one. It's some 434 pages. It's a thick one. But then he followed that up with a shorter book called Thoughts or Things, and that's really what he's known for. The shorter book is 140 pages, not the heavy-duty Your Forces and How to Use Them, not a heavy-duty 434 pages, but a nice 140 pages. He really, condenses his thoughts into this book, and that's really the book he's known for. Matter of fact, his gravesite, what it says on his gravestone. It's inscripted Thoughts or Things. Anyhow, when people ask me, Beto, is there a book or a movie about the law of attraction that you'd recommend? I really don't. I say watch my episodes, watch my shows, for a couple of reasons. Number one, if I was going to recommend, and feel free, but if I was going to recommend one, it would be this one, Thoughts or Things. But having said that, Prentice, he lived a long time ago, right? So, it's going to take some work to really be able to put, your head in where he was at that time. It's not really totally politically correct, some of the things he says. Although for his time, he is very progressive. And even today, actually, in the Trump era, he would be considered progressive. I don't recommend it, but, you're not going to hurt yourself by reading that book. You just have to think about the time period he was in, do some work, mental work, and then you could, I'm sure, get a lot out of it. Interestingly enough, Prentice was known when he was in San Francisco as a bohemian. He's known as a bohemian because people said that he didn't really care all that much about money, had a disregard for money. Kind of reminds me a little bit about myself. He was more interested in truth, right? In seeking truth and wisdom, right? And in achieving peace, that peace that surpasses all understanding. Those were the things he cared about. And teaching others, which is probably why he's not as popular as other people who talked about the law of attraction or alluded to it, right? The think and grow rich folk, right? And you know, people are like, you know, law of attraction is all about attracting money and wealth and blah blah blah. That wasn't Mulford, and that wasn't Mulford. He was about truth and others and peace and harmony, and he is known as the articulator. He is the guy, right? He is the articulator, the pioneer of the law of attraction. So although I don't recommend books, you're not going to hurt yourself by reading Thoughts or Things by Prentice Mulford if you want to dig deeper into the law of attraction. But I would, if you do that, I would say that please, if you're reading that book, read it in correspondence, right, in connection. Put his work in conversation with my work, and then it'll be of a lot more value to you. So I'm going to go ahead and start digging in a little deeper into what Prentice Mulford said about the elixir of life, about the elixir of immortality. He said this: the elixir of life, which is no myth. You're probably thinking, Beto, you just said at the beginning that the elixir of life or the elixir of immortality is a myth. But watch the next word he says. So, which is no myth, but a spiritual reality and possibility. See, there's a big difference there, right? Right? It's internal is what he's saying. It's internal. So the elixir of life, immortality, is a spiritual reality. It's possible. It's inside of ourselves. It's not something external, right? It's not a cocktail that you mix up, right? And drink and hope it works, right? And probably going to give you mercury poisoning or might even kill you, right? Like it did the emperor. No, it's something spiritual, something inside of us. So he what does he use as evidence, right, or support for that claim? Mulford used ancient text, right? He used the ancient text that says, the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. Let me say that again. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. This is what Mulford used, that reference to ancient text, which means that immortality, it's going to happen, basically. It's meant to happen, right? Death is an enemy, right? It's not something that has to happen. What Mulford doesn't do, he doesn't use scientific evidence like I do, right? And this is why I was saying, you use, if you're going to read Dr. Things, do it, in correspondence, put it in conversation with my work. He doesn't use science, right? I talk about stardust, right? The body can regenerate itself, right? Which is why it's possible, right? Which is why the fountain of youth, the elixir of life, elixir of immortality is possible. Through science, we know we're made of stardust. Our body can regenerate itself. Also, another scientific example, lobsters, right? The divine created lobsters, right? But the divine also created us, but in the image of the divine. So how much the divine loves lobsters, how much more does the divine love us? Nonetheless, lobsters grow larger, stronger, more fertile, right? More fertile, more fertile as they mature. What else does Mulford not talk about or not mention or not write about in regards to the elixir of life or the elixir of immortality? Ancient wisdom, right? In past episode I talked about the Taíno, right? The indigenous people of Puerto Rico, and how Ponce de Leon was looking for the fountain of youth. And there's a school of thought, which I believe, that the Taínos said, oh yeah, fountain of youth, absolutely, it's over there, right? It's in the land of the Maya, right? And then, somehow he ended up in Florida. He didn't end up in the land of the Maya. But anyhow, Mulford doesn't refer to ancient wisdom. But he does. He talks about the elixir of life, of immortality. It's not a myth. It's a spiritual reality and possibility. So he gives us the what, right? But what about the how? What does Mulford say about the how? About how you can manifest immortality. And this is what he says. He says, if you're not told of these, your powers, and I put that, right? I put those parentheses, to manifest immortality, how can you ever use them? So what's Mulford saying? He's saying it can be taught, right? Which is what these episodes are all about. Manifesting immortality can be taught, right? the reason it hasn't been manifested is people don't know. They don't know they have it inside of them. They don't know they have the elixir of immortality. They don't know they have the fountain of youth inside of them. But it can be taught. But it can't be, Mulford, it can't be bartered, stolen, or sold. So in a future episode, I'm going to talk about, it's going to be something along the lines of the great race. The great race to manifest immortality, the Silicon Valley billionaires versus us, the faithful, the meek. Because of this, because Silicon Valley billionaires believe they can manifest immortality and control it, right? They believe they can control it and commodify it and sell it, right? They figure if, somebody commodified the law of attraction, it wasn't Mulford, but somebody did, why can't we commodify immortality? But it can't, right? Mulford says it can't. It can't be commodified. What does he say about the when? When is this going to happen? When is immortality going to manifest? Well, he doesn't give us a lot of information. Mulford says, sooner or later, it's going to happen. Right? Sooner or later, right? That's what he says. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. So not a lot of information there about the when or even the where. But no problem, because we have other sources. And I'm going to address this next week. We're going to talk about, in episode 24 next week, so please tune in, the when and the where. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be exciting. So Mulford doesn't give a lot of information there, just says sooner or later as to the when, doesn't mention the where. But we're going to talk about that next week. So exciting stuff. And about the why and the who. What about the why and the who? There's some information in there from Mulford, but what I wanted to do for this episode is put Mulford in conversation with Toni Morrison, because I think Toni Morrison really drills in to the why and the who. And you're probably thinking right now, Toni Morrison, the novelist, like Immortality, are you sure? Are you sure? Well, I believe that she pointed towards it. And that's where we're going to turn right now. We're going to turn the page. Talk about Toni Morrison. So who was Toni Morrison? Toni Morrison lived from 1931 to 2019. So she actually, rest in peace, just passed away last year. She's a novelist, an essayist, a book editor, and a college professor. And I actually took a lot of time in preparing this episode because I know a lot of you have read her novels, right? Some of you have personal, I know some of you who watch my episodes have personal relationship. You had personal relationship with Toni Morrison. You knew her. Either you were a student of hers or you're a colleague of hers. You knew her. So I want to do, I want to do Toni Morrison right. I want to do her justice, and I hope I am by putting her in conversation with Mulford and looking at a lecture that she gave back in '96. So anyhow, Toni Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize. Won the Pulitzer Prize for her novel Beloved. She won it in 1987. She also won the Nobel Prize in Literature, became a global figure, right? A towering figure in literature. She won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. She's just so many awards. If I could spend a month just talking about Toni Morrison, but she's won so many awards. But one of the other awards that I wanted to highlight is this one here. She was selected to give the NEH Jefferson Lecture in 1996. It is the federal government's, the U.S. government's highest honor of achievement in the humanities. And that's what, for this episode, that's what I want to focus on is this lecture. It's beautiful. It's honestly, for me, it's one of the most important lectures of the last 25 years, if not the last 50 years. It's available online. Take a look. I'm just going to go over a little bit of it because I don't have a lot of time to go over the whole thing, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful lecture. So anyway, in addition, I love my pop culture references. So pop culture reference. Her novels, Toni Morrison, 4 of her novels over a span of 6 years were selected by Oprah Winfrey for the Oprah Winfrey's book club, the Oprah's book club. And as a result, those novels experienced the Oprah effect. So to give you an example, her first novel, The Bluest Eye, which was published in 1970, when Oprah selected that book for Oprah's book club, in 2000, it sold an additional 800,000 copies. So again, I had to get my pop culture reference in there. So moving on to this powerful, powerful lecture of Toni Morrison in '96, entitled The Future of Time. You say that again. The title of the lecture was The Future of Time. So now you're probably thinking, okay, I can see some connections now with the Elixir of Immortality, with what Bethel talks about, right? With that, just that title itself, right? Gives us some insight as to why I'm putting Prentice Mulford in conversation with Toni Morrison for this episode. I'm not going to read all of this, but I just wanted to highlight a couple things from what I wrote here. And it's this, that Toni Morrison talks about a longing of days gone by, right? And this is just beautifully written, but she talks about a longing of days gone by when the tempo, right? When the tempo was closer to our own heartbeat. A longing for days gone by when the tempo was closer to our own heartbeat. When time was anything but money. So at this point, if you watch my past episodes, you see the connection now, right? Time, money, right? I talk about man-made currency, and it's just that. It's just man-made currency versus the precious commodity, the precious currency of time, right? Toni Morrison talked about that in this lecture. When time was anything about money. Longing, right? Longing for when time does what? When we flip that currency in time, the precious currency of time becomes more valuable than man-made money. Beautifully written here. She goes on to say this: no, it isn't progress that interests me. I am interested in the future of time. So what is she talking about here? It's not progress that interests her. It's this. At that time and today, people, these prophets, right, talking about the future, these futurists, what do they talk about? They scare us is what they do. Unless you're a Silicon Valley billionaire or part of that, little circle there, maybe, some Wall Street billionaire or something, or some, powerful politician or something. They actually scare us, right? Because what do? They talk about the future is going to be controlled by what? Artificial intelligence, right? It's going to be controlled by these handful of, Silicon Valley billionaires that are, going to make these robots, and humans are going to be excess. It's not going to be needed, right? Just these few people, and, the rest of us are like, wow, like we're not needed, right? What is Morrison shouts, right? She shouts with her words. No, it's not progress that interests me. No, I'm interested in the future of time. Powerful, powerful words. Let me go ahead and flip this here. So moving on, that lecture. Again, it's a long lecture. Toni Morrison gives beautiful references of literature and whatnot. But again, I'm just, really condensing this for this episode. But she talks about people who've been pressed to the margins, right? And I love how she phrases that, pressed to the margins. My divinity school advisor loved using the reference to ancient text, the least of these. I've talked about the meek, right? The faithful, all the same idea, right? These people who are, pressed to the margins. She's talking about us. It's what she's doing. And this is what she says. She says, perhaps it is the reality of a future that will be shaped by those who have been pressed to the margins, us, right? And then she goes on, that has occasioned the tremble of Latter-day Prophets, afraid that the current disequilibria, I might not be pronouncing that right, but you know what I'm trying to get at, disequilibria is a stirring, not an erasure. So stirring, all right? Latter-day Prophets. So what is she saying? She's saying these Latter-day Prophets that we're just talking about, right? These futurists, these Silicon Valley billionaires, these artificial intelligence folk, they're scared. And I've alluded to this before. I know this. I know, because we have evidence of this. They are scared of us. They are fearful of us. And you're probably thinking, why? I don't know how to build a robot. Maybe you do. I don't know. But I don't know how to build a robot. Why would they be scared of me? Because of the spiritual piece that Mulford talks about. Once we realize, right, we're taught that the elixir of life, immortality inside of us, guess what? Guess who controls the future? It's not the Silicon Valley billionaires, right? It's not those AI guys, right? It's us. This is what she's getting at. Powerful. Stirring. She uses the word stirring. This reminded me right away. It reminded me of the Mashiach Azteca prophecy, right? That the current sun, right, this era of empire, the current era of the white supremacist empires is going to end by earthquake. She uses the word stirring in this lecture. For me, it's a reference to the earthquake with the prophecy of the Mashiach Azteca that's going to end in earthquake. But don't be afraid, right? They can fear, right? Those guys can fear. But us, there's nothing to fear. Because why? Because the future is going to be a harmonious time where we all learn to get along. We all learn to live in harmony with each other and nature, right? That's the prophecy. And she's just such a beautiful writer. She says that not only is history not dead, but that it is about to take its first unfettered breath. So next week I'm going to talk about the end of the Maya calendar, right? This for me is a reference, for me. You know, unfortunately I can't have this conversation with Toni Morrison right now. Maybe I can. But, you know, we don't know physically, right? She's passed. But anyhow, this idea that the first unfettered breath. So, and I'm going to talk about this more in the episode next week, but I'm going to talk about the end of the Mayan calendar. This idea that the calendar didn't end, right? Life continues, but we don't have to what? Count time anymore. Not the way we have in the past, right? Why? Because history's not dead, but it's going to take its first unfettered breath when we enter that new era, right? That new era of what for me is manifesting immortality. Then she uses a literary quote from William Gass about the acres of Eden, right? There are acres of Eden inside ourselves. For me, this reminded me of who? Joni Mitchell, right? The pop singer Joni Mitchell, who back in the day talked about or sang about stardust, how we're stardust, right? We have to get back to the garden, right? Reminded me of Mulford, right? Reminded me of this idea that the elixir of life or immortality, the fountain of youth is what? Inside of us, right? Acres of Eden inside of us. And she ends the lecture like this. Time does have a future, right? Time does have a future. Longer than its past. And infinitely more hospitable to the human race. What is she doing there? She's saying, futurist, SV, billionaires, those of you trying to scare my folk, right? Trying to scare us, the faithful, the meek, those who have been pressed to the margins, the least of these, talking about a future in which we're just surplus, right? Excess, right? Irrelevant. No. The future is going to be infinitely, not a little bit, not a lot, infinitely more hospitable to who? The human race, us, right? Which is what the Mashiach Azteca prophecy said. The Mayans said, right? There's going to be an era when we all live in harmony with each other, nature. Powerful, powerful lecture by Toni Morrison. So again, I hope I did it justice because I know some of you knew Morrison personally. You had personal relationships. I hope I did her justice. If you have a chance, read it in full. The lecture, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. So anyhow, I'm going to end this episode now and just mention that the title of next week's episode. So because I referred to it, right? I referred to next week's episode in this episode. Episode number 24 will take place next week. It's going to be entitled Hopi Prophecy. Yes, the Native Americans, the Hopi. Hopi Prophecy, the end of the Mayan calendar, and Aztlan. Aztlan. You can take the boy out of Aztlan, but you can't take the Aztlan out of the boy. Our call to manifest immortality. It's going to be powerful. You're not going to want to miss it. I hope you can join live. It'll take place next Sunday, November 29, 2020, here live on Facebook Live, at the regular time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And please, if you have a chance, visit my new website. Thank you to Miss Healy, to the lovely Healy, for providing this gift from the heart, this website. It's www.dailydivinitycoach.com. So I thank you. I'm so grateful for you for joining today, for those of you watching the live recorded video, for taking your time to watch this episode. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope I did Prentice Mulford and Toni Morrison proud. And yes, I'm so grateful for you. Blessings for the rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are, because I know some of you are in other places of the world watching. So blessings for the rest of your day or evening. And I'm going to go ahead and put on these reading glasses, which as I reverse aging, I won't need very much longer, and turn this off, this show off. So hope you can join next week, and thanks again for being here today. Blessings.